The great city of Los Angeles. I'm joined by Mr. Park and Mr. Koretz. That's three members. There are two other potential members. Mr. Labange, who I'm told is walking in the room as we speak. So now we are four members. And we'll see if Mr. Alarcon joins us or not. We have two general public comment cards, and if I could ask Alex Thompson and C.T. Williams to come on up. Didn't know what the C.T. stands for. We always call you doctor. Huh?
Clyde?
Clyde. Thomas. Okay, great. Alex, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Thompson. I'm from Mar Vista, and I'm the president of the Bike Side. I just got back from a trip to the mountains, and I hit LA's streets, and I realized that we don't have a second-rate transportation system in the city. We don't have a third-rate transportation in the system in the city. We have a fourth-rate transportation system in the city. We don't live up to the expectations of any other metropolis in the world of our size or our class. And so it was interesting to me because when I was up huffing and puffing at 12,000 feet with a backpack, I ran into these holes in the mountain, these mines where men and horses with dynamite pulled hundreds of thousands of tons of ore out of the sides of mountain into the 1800s. And they did it all by hand. And what struck me is that they pulled so much out that these things that they did in the 1800s are EPA Superfund cleanup sites. I can't understand how human beings can do things like that, and yet at the same time we can have such a low standard for performance when it comes to transportation in this city. To me, that was a wake-up call, and coming back, I'm raising my standards, and I'm hoping that you guys will raise your standards too, starting with improving things for pedestrians and cyclists. We just don't have a functioning system. People are getting killed out there every day, and we really need to take a harder look at how things are and have a higher standard. So this is my plea to you for a higher standard.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you sharing that with us. And as for public knowledge, I rode a bike on Saturday, first time in 30 years.
Did you have training wheels?
I had no training wheels. I reflected back
Make
to
sure
my,
your
my
insurance
youth,
is up.
and it was quite an experience, and I'm looking forward to continuing that. And I'm looking forward to the 200 miles of bike path that we approved in our 5-year bike plan, and we should do more. And I agree with you, Mr. Thompson.
You should be aware that they're behind on that as of the end of this fiscal year.
I heard that, yes. Yeah. Thank you very much for your comments. Dr. Williams.
Dr. Clyde Thomas Williams. El Sereno, Northeast LA, member of the new Northeast LA Coalition of Neighborhood Councils. But we're interested in several things, including corridor studies. And we'd highly recommend that the new department be assigned to develop corridors, not just individual pieces, but whole corridors, such as San Fernando Road coming into downtown, such as Huntington Drive Mission coming into downtown, Valley, Main coming into downtown, as units, not as individuals. We're going to repair this intersection or that intersection. And also, we'd like to know what will be Tiger 3 projects, because July the 6th, Tiger 3 was approved, and we'd like to participate as neighborhood councils in the development of projects that are going to improve the transportation of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Jaime de la Vega as the permanent general manager of DOT.
And before he speaks, we do have two public comment cards, if I'm not mistaken. The same two gentlemen who were just up here. Come on back up. One is Dr. Clyde Williams, and the other is Alex Thompson on item number 1.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. We hope that he does better than the other examples of assistant mayors in the Department of Water and Power. It wasn't such a good experience over there. So we anticipate that he will be better, We're also hoping that he brings the department together, and if it remains a separate department from Public Works, that he conduct an overall corridor plan for each one of the major land use planning areas within the city. And we'd like him to start with Northeast LA. We're ready to start because there's another project called 710. State Route 710, North Extension, Gap Closure, whatever you want to call it. Roughly $10 billion project, and it's, might say, under environmental review right now. However, members of the City Council have indicated displeasure with certain routes within a 100 square mile project area that Caltrans has defined. We would be interested in going back to Mr. Sam Yorty's approval of the 710 for Caltrans and rescind the Caltrans approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Alex Thompson, Mar Vista, Bikeside. As I mentioned, or we mentioned earlier, the mayor set a target of 200 miles over 5 years of bikeways, which comes out to 40 a year, and he committed to that target of 40 miles of bikeways per year. We're now at, for the last fiscal year, 26. So we're 34% behind schedule already in the first year. That's not a good sign. Overall, this mayor, he's 6 years into his tenure. We're almost done here. And the legacy hasn't been one of change thus far. So I think Mr. De La Vega has an opportunity to really change the culture over at LADOT. The question is, will he show us his chops as somebody who can support pedestrians and cyclists, as somebody who can make this a more livable city, as somebody who can make this a better place to be? Because thus far, Mr. De La Vega, as Deputy Mayor of Transportation for 6 years, was in charge of the show to a large extent. And so this 26 miles, and which falls very far short of the 40, is on his shoulders to some extent. And so I just encourage this committee to emphasize to Mr. De La Vega that it's on his shoulders to make up that 14 lost miles and in the same year still meet the 40-mile target for this year, and to move forward other pedestrian and bikeway cyclist-friendly projects at a reasonable rate. Otherwise, the mayor cannot be fairly looked at as a sustainable transportation mayor. That's
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on up, Mr. De La Vega. I have a bunch of questions. I'm sure my colleagues might. Let me just start with the first overview. What's your vision for improving mobility here in the city? And how do you plan in using your role as general manager to realize this vision?
Can I just ask as the vice chair, maybe we give him 2 minutes to tell him who he is and his new role, just before we ask
I think
questions?
that's great. Go
Okay.
for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Councilman Labange.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, go.
Do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just by way of background for those who don't know, my formal training, I have a master's degree in urban planning from UCLA, BA in urban studies from Cal State Northridge. I've been deputy mayor for 6 years under the Villaraigosa administration. Prior to that, I was budget director for the city attorney for a little over 3 years. Also served in the Reardon administration as a consultant and assistant deputy mayor. Formerly served on the MT board of directors and am currently a Metrolink board member. I've been serving as interim general manager now for about 6 weeks. A lot of the work is focused on organizational reform, process reengineering, with a lot of emphasis on the traffic officer and parking enforcement function. Commander Mike Williams is here today. He's on loan from LAPD. We've been looking at changing sort of the mission statement, policies and procedures, training and supervision, and deployment, and really just trying to professionalize that group. There are many, many talented women and men in that unit who are really dedicated to the city of Los Angeles, and they do a great job enforcing laws, controlling traffic, and generating millions of dollars a year of revenue for the mayor and council so that you can program that for other services. You want more, Councilman, or? Because you started your question.
How excited are you about this job? I'm
Very excited,
Oh,
Councilman.
good, okay. Tell me what you envision. What's your,
Yeah.
what's your?
You're
no, no.
with my questions.
Okay, well, just give him another minute.
Well, he was finished.
Yeah. I think actually it transitions well into Councilman Rosendahl's first question.
Very well, okay, thank you very much. I love you, Bill. Okay.
Hello. Okay. What do you see as your biggest near and long-term challenges? I mean, you heard Mr. Thompson talk about his frustration with the bike paths.
Yeah, actually, I think I want to go back to your other question, which was on the vision side. I think, broadly speaking, we need to transition the department to more of a multimodal department. That means more emphasis on transit, cycling, pedestrian, but that also means that we're still going to have a focus on making sure that the city streets are maintained and flow at an optimal level. And I think when you look at the department, there are three primary functions. The first is just bread and butter services. That's the traffic officers I mentioned before and the field crews that do the signal repair and the restriping and the signs. That's just the basic. That's about 2/3 of our operation. The second major part is project delivery, really focusing on signal synchronization, assisting MTA and Expo Authority on the transit project construction, and then implementing the bicycle plan. And then the third area, which might be a little bit new, it's really getting DOT back to a role as a thought leader in transportation. Historically, this department has done a great job at innovation. The Rapid Bus Program, which MT runs, that's highly touted, that was actually developed by LADOT. The signal system that allows the prioritization is based on LADOT work and their ATSAC signal system. The signal system itself is an innovation, one of the leading systems in the entire world as far as optimizing the flow of traffic. And it's not just an auto system, it's that system that allows us to have rapid bus. It's that system that allows us to have the orange line perform as it does, as well as the light rail lines.
Traffic congestion is obviously our biggest problem in the city. The whole paralysis we experience, at least in my part, on the west side, and obviously some of the issues downtown. Measure R, you've been part of the architect with the mayor on this. You've gone back to Washington a lot with him on that. Could you just bring us up to date as you see your role as the head of this department with the Measure R aspects?
Yeah, I think as it relates to Measure R, DOT and for that matter, Public Works in particular are the primary support departments in the city to make sure that those projects go forward. I think what's really important for the council and mayors to make sure that DOT and Public Works have the appropriate staffing. I don't think it's a money issue, it's a staffing issue, that we have the right position authorities and that we're allowed to fill those so we can support those projects, whether it's striping and signal work at DOT, inspection at Public Works, design review at Bureau of Engineering. Those projects reimburse city staff, so it's really important as we move forward and as these projects ramp up, whether it's Expo Phase 2, Crenshaw, the Van Nuys Busway, the subway, Regional Connector, Green Line LAX, that we have the staff in place at different city departments so that we can move those projects forward as quickly as possible.
Mr. LeBron.
What part of the city you think functions well?
In transportation, just broadly speaking.
Right, yeah, like what is, if you look to new developments, we're the first major city in the country to be developed post the automobile. And then post-World War II, with so many people ending their tours of duty in San Pedro, saying, I don't want to go back to the snow of Montana or Iowa. They made their home here. Gas was cheap. The Pacific Electric was on a slow decline to 1961 when totally removed. Freeways came in 55, 57, 58, et cetera, et cetera. And we missed some disconnects. In 1968, the Los Angeles Times endorsed against what would have been a world-class transit system with a bond issue, and we've only played catch-up until, many years with certain improvements, starting with the late great Kenny Hahn, which got the Long Beach light rail line going. So there's things happening. I mean, I think we have to look at it. I understand what everybody is saying here. We do live in a mobile city, and we're also, and a lot has to do with Prop 13. Why you have a problem on the west side is Prop 13 said cities have to have commerce and sales tax to survive, not just bedroom communities, because pre-1978, Santa Monica was basically a bedroom community, but the growth of the west side accelerated at that time. So all these variety of issues. What works to the extent, and does it work too good? The West Valley does have post-60 development there, which has no cut-through traffic problems like we have in our districts in the center city here because they built the tracks with external Sherman Way, Roscoe, et cetera. And maybe that's a bigger question to answer fully, but I think you should discuss it and see what works in the city, what is positive. I don't think it's a terrible city, and I'm sorry that people express that they feel the city is terrible or fourth rate. There's challenges as we all work together and live together. So,
I would say, Councilman, generally, I think most parts of the city perform well at certain times of the day. The real challenge is that we have, influx of people to the city, with people moving throughout the city during peak hours, and that obviously results in a lot of congestion. I think if you look at the way the city's been developed over time, we're not going to widen streets or double-deck streets to build our way out of that problem. So what we need to be doing is invest in alternative capacity. If you look at the subway...
Let me ask a question on that, if I could,
Yeah.
on widening streets. I talked to Maria. I wanted to see a Los Angeles City advisory group. I don't think we ever got it, but the purpose was of a freeway system, which is 500 miles in the county, or in Division 7 of L.A. Caltrans. 500 miles of freeway. There are choke points in the freeway system. If they were opened, there would not be the choke point. The Hollywood Freeway is a prime example of a tremendous amount of engineering from over 50 years ago that have short ramps that cause backup in the neighborhood streets. And say if we're not going to do anything more, some of those systems do work if there's the thing. And we never were able to get an advisory group, which we should, because just seeing the horrible story in the LA Times about this thing that happened on the 405 and the neighbors and not wanting it one way and what the extra cost is, there should be some, because so much of the freeway system is in Los Angeles, should be some way that we have dialogue with them in some form and fashion. It's not just state, we interchange. But on that particular point, this congestion management they just kicked off, are they planning to widen the southbound 110 freeway, Harbor Freeway, at the 405 where it goes from 4 lanes to 3? Or do you know?
They are not as part of that project. I think you raise a good point, because in some of these bottleneck issues, the 405 carpool lane is a perfect example of that. It's a missing link in the system, and that's why that's so critical. I think the other issue raised on ramp lengths, I think on a go-forward basis, there's an opportunity for DOT and for the mayor and council to partner with Caltrans and MTA to develop the funding so that we can do those projects in the future.
And I think some systems are unfinished. West Los Angeles was to get another freeway. It was 1972 deleted by the state senate and the state government for that, which was obviously not the right thing, but still we allowed growth. And that's one of the other balances. Also, I'd like to see a chart. What could street services do that you do, what we could combine on, what we could lower our overhead? I think it's great that Commander Williams is on loan from LAPD because our parking enforcement is an important team, not just for regular enforcement, but also in emergency situations. They're partnered with the police and fire department where they relieve the immediate situation by controlling the street system. So getting that straightened out. Your district offices, don't always say no to everything. Try to have, if it's a neighborhood street, help a neighborhood. Also define alternative streets. I'm pleased that we're trying to work ahead with 4th Street for bicycles, but at the same time I see bicycles even today as I watch the pedestrians cross at Aliso and Alameda. All of a sudden, a bike was on the wrong side of the street coming right at me, and we were able to have enough clearance. But to be able to assign people, meaning education, engineering, enforcement, to be able to effectively try to make everybody go together. I had a question for Michelle Mallory about bikes on sidewalks, because when on the bikes on sidewalks and pedestrians, the conflict, and all of a sudden, and I do believe when the mass and the cycling community in the district that I represent, there are many people who live within the Wilshire corridor who do ride for a variety of work assignments or et cetera. And so all of a sudden you get a mass and then it starts to move and work together. What do you think on the issue of the sidewalks and bikes on the sidewalks? And is there enough analysis of any conflict with pedestrians? And also those motorists, because the bike leaves the sidewalk and then comes back into the street system and then comes back up.
Yeah, Councilman, we don't currently have enough analysis on that. I think you know that currently bikes are allowed on sidewalks
Tell me, okay.
in the city of Los Angeles, but it's a policy decision for the council, and, we could look at that if that's an issue.
Well, I think this is a great time for conversations on all things. So I look forward to your leadership. I thank you for your service. But all these questions should be, and Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask on some of these issues to expedite, because I know projects do fall behind, to work with the variety of neighborhood associations and councils to try to expedite, because the challenge is, and I know the man's on his Twitter right there, if I could talk to the man, Doctor, not everybody is in their job anymore in the city. They've been displaced by our downsizing, so our work programs are falling back. But I think if we have that to the attention and we can know, we could try to achieve that. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Parks?
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions. You mentioned that you're looking internally in the department. What kind of realignment are you looking at?
I haven't made any decisions at this point, but, broadly speaking, what I'm looking at is there a better way or a more efficient way to deliver projects? I think that's definitely a challenge and an opportunity given the downsizing of staff in the department. If we can improve those business processes, hopefully we can deliver more services with the number of people we have today.
Then let me ask you, on the, you get any sense of why we had such a drastic reduction in enforcement revenue?
We're currently evaluating that. I don't have a specific answer, but, that's definitely a goal, is to increase the productivity in that area, and we will be working on that.
Okay. And then any status on the current congestion pricing for the downtown meters and that pilot that we're going to go into? Is that on course, and when could we see that possibly being finalized?
Yeah, I think we're going to be breaking ground later this year, and there should be a report on its way to council for approval of the selected vendor to implement that program.
And then my final question is, in dealing with the 5-year plan for LED OT, when do you think we'll begin to see, we did the first year investment, and we hope we can stay on course as we get to the second year, and we hope that you give us every year a plan for 5 years out. But when do you think we'll begin to see some benefit or increase revenue from our parking lots? Because they tell us they run about a 40% effectiveness level, and generally because we've kind of depressed them as an asset, and so.
Right. Yeah, I'd want to look at that closer and report back to you, but I think broadly speaking, on parking lot utilization and on-street meters as well, I think we probably need a more granular look at rates, because, the mayor and council increased rates across the board in part as a revenue move. I think at least anecdotally, you can go to certain neighborhoods, it's obvious people aren't parking on the street, meaning we're actually not getting any revenue. Mm-hmm. So I think there is an opportunity there to relook at rates.
We've looked at the rates on meters, and we've transitioned. I think we're close to, 50-60% of the meters have been changed out, and the newer meters, and we're looking to continue that. And I think part of the plan was to look at areas that have no meters, and then look at areas that have meters that are non-functional. But the one thing that keeps being ignored is how do we publicize, how do we manage these lots that are underperforming. And again, I know we had about a 5-year hiatus on looking at P3, but now that they are securely in our inventory, and we're asking the LADOT to look at them on their 5-year plan, I'd just like to see if we have some idea of when we can start seeing them become a productive part of our revenue source.
Yeah, I don't know specifically, Councilman, but we'll be looking at that, and I can report back to you shortly.
All right. Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, I think most of my questions have been asked, so I'll just ask one follow-up from another action we took a little while ago. We passed a motion as an offshoot of the red light camera discussion to add to the signal timing of all of our red light camera intersections and other seemingly more dangerous ones that weren't included. What's your plan for that?
Yeah, I need to meet with my engineering staff on that. I understand they're working on that right now. I don't know the status right now.
Do you have any idea what a timeline would be to get that
I would say
done?
within 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming before us, and this will be heard in full council on Friday? Okay. Look forward to you coming back on Friday for more robust discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And when you come back, would you have an org chart so you could share with the council?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true, we should recommend, I recommend we move forward with your appointment to that
Want to
position.
sit through it.
Do I have a second for that? Second. In favor?
Oh,
Unanimous by the four of us. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Parks. I was so enthralled by the discussion. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is a DOT report relative to the renewal of temporary preferential parking district number 111.
Okay, we have a lot of cards on this one. And let's just start with CD2's representative here. It says Jeff, and I can't make out the last name, Jeff. What's your last name? There you go. That's why I couldn't do it. And then is this Joel Stager? Come on up. Al Schaefer? Come on up. Tracy Schaefer? And after that, Barry, Julian, and David Wiggins, and John Nagler, okay? And then, of course, Dr. Clyde Williams. All right, you're up.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jeff Yazetta. I'm Councilman Paul Krikorian's field deputy for the Studio City area. Just wanted to enter into the record a brief statement summarizing our office's involvement in preferential parking district number 111. Beginning in November 2010, residents from the upper segment of Iredell Street began reaching out to the office of Councilman Krikorian regarding the street parking in their neighborhood. Many people who hike in the nearby Williker Park often seek parking in this section of Iredell Street because it lies outside the boundary of temporary preferential parking district number 111. Our office looked into the situation and found that Iredell Street is narrow and has a no parking provision on the southern side. The Department of Transportation confirmed that the existing temporary PPD already accommodated the maximum of 5 street segments and could not be expanded to include the upper section of Iredell Street. In April, our office held a meeting with the residents and the Department of Transportation staff to find a temporary solution to the parking situation. The meeting concluded with a temporary mitigation goal of parking restrictions during peak hiking hours to be implemented along the northern side of Iredell Street. There was also a request to create several pockets that would not have any restrictions so that residents could have guests over at any time. Our office and the Department of Transportation are able to accommodate both of these things and allowed the community time to select the locations of the areas with no restrictions. Last month, the community notified our office that they had finalized their temporary plan for Iredell Street. Our office is currently working with DOT and setting up a meeting where we can present this plan for their approval and implementation. Our office understands that this is only a temporary solution and plan to work with the Department of Transportation in the future in implementing a permanent preferential parking district in the area that includes the section of Iredell Street that is currently left out. The letter from Councilman Krikorian to the Department of Transportation indicates his support for renewing the temporary preferential parking district number 111 for another year while we continue working towards a permanent solution with the residents in this area. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Please, sir.
Yes, Al Schaefer, resident of Iredell Street. Just by way of background, I want to let you guys know what's kind of transpired over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, we live in Fryman Canyon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Fryman Canyon, but it's a very, very popular hiking trail. 5 years ago, the congestion on Iredell Street got so impacted that this temporary parking restriction was put into place on Iredell Street. It ended at an area that we actually live on Iredell Street, and so it cut off half of our street and did not include our street. What's happened is because of the increase in interest in hiking, the increase in visitors to that area has been tremendous. And so what people are doing, instead of deciding to pay in the lot, they're looking for areas where they can park for free, and that's our street.
I see.
It's a very narrow street, and we've gone through various councils to be here today to present our argument as to why our street should be included in the temporary parking district. Our street is very narrow. It presents challenges for emergency vehicles. We live in a designated fire brush area. If a fire were to break out, an ambulance or a fire truck would have a very difficult time ascending the street, and we feel that puts us at risk. We sent notice to the city, putting them on notice that that dangerous condition exists in our area, and believe that emergency situation should allow you guys to reconsider including our street as one of the temporary streets to get the temporary parking.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
My name is Joel Steiger, and I live on the same section of the street that the previous speaker lives on. If I might just add, the consequences of the permit parking that was instituted was simply to move the problem up the street to our part of the street.
I see.
All the cars that used to park down there and all the complaints that existed down there, because the hikers are often rude, have moved to the front of our houses. And as a consequence, a neighborhood that was quiet and pleasant is now inundated with people, robberies on occasion, car break-ins. My mailbox, for instance, I frequently don't get my mail. And it makes no sense, because Iredell Street is one continuous street, and for some inexplicable reason, we were omitted from this sequence.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments as well. Please. Yes.
I'm gonna.
Your name, please?
I'm sorry. I'm Tracy Schaefer.
Okay,
and
great.
We've all worked together as 16 households on our spur of Iredell Street, was not included in that permit parking. We all unanimously feel that being included in the permit parking district is the only fair and reasonable solution, because it's shifted the problem to our street, which is the narrowest part of the street and the most dangerous. That being said, we've worked very hard collaboratively. We've sat and we've petitioned and received the support of the Studio City Residents Association, the Studio City Neighborhood Council, the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the LAPD's lead officer, Mike Lewis. We met with Assemblymember Feuer. We met with Senator Pavley. All have indicated or formally written resolutions in favor of us being included in this. We know today you're not here to discuss that. You're here to vote on whether or not to renew the permit parking that exists on every single street that surrounds us. We're a singular small part of a street that was excluded, the only other place that literally hundreds of hikers a day are seeking to park. And therefore it's created an incredibly frustrating, hazardous, dangerous situation for this small, tiny 16 residences. And as a result, we're here to say if we can't be included in the permit parking, which is what Councilman Krikorian's office has told us, because of the 5 zones that can be included. If we can't be included, which we would ask you, please, that would be our first and foremost objective, then we would need to oppose the renewal, because by renewing the permit parking, it's only creating a much, much more serious situation for us on a much more specific, tiny part of the street that's become very, very dangerous. We've presented a petition to Councilman Krikorian's office back early part of the year. It's signed unanimously by every single one of our residences. It outlines all of our points, and I'm happy to provide it to you if you'd like.
Please do. Give it to our clerk. Thank you very much. Sarah.
Barry Julian.
Can we ask David Wiggins to come up, and John Nagler as well? Thank you all for speaking so far. Barry, you're up. Go ahead.
Barry Julian. I'm a resident of Iredell Street as well. I'm actually the first house where you have the most attractive parking in the neighborhood now, as the sign ended at the neighbor to my left. And I think, as you can see in prior communications from Krikorian's office, that they laid out the case for why this area needs to be protected. Inexplicably, as everyone said, we thought we were included. They said Iredell Street was protected. It turned out we weren't. They ended it at this Iredell Place junction. And I think a community impact study would clearly show that the one area that needs the most protection from a safety standpoint, from the emergency vehicles, the inability to navigate the streets, it would be our spur. I mean, there's not any street that's any more narrow or has more curves in the whole area. So I think it's unfortunate, but the inequitable creation of the temporary parking district, which excluded half of Iredell Street, leaves us with no alternative other than to oppose the extension. There are viable solutions, obviously. There are small streets with 2 or 3 houses that have wide lanes and no curves, and if there are 6 spurs in an area and 5 temporary parking spots that can be included in temporary parking district, we would certainly be the first from a safety standpoint that you want to protect. If that was not feasible, you would do a rotation, or you would eliminate a part of the parking district that does not need the protection to the severity that we need it. So really, Councilmember Krikorian's office laid out the risks and the problems in this area, and then not only did not protect us, but exacerbated a problem in the most dangerous area in the neighborhood.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir.
I'm David Wiggins. I also live on Iredell Street.
Dr. Clyde Williams, you've got a card on this too, I understand. Is that right, Dr. Williams?
No, he doesn't. He's in El Sereno.
You said from 2 to 8, so cut you out of that one. Okay, fine. Go for it.
I'm still David Wiggins, and I still live on Iredell
2
Street.
minutes. Go for it.
It is downright unneighborly to oppose our close neighbors in getting this protection renewed for them. So you must know that this is a fairly desperate situation for us to come here and oppose the temporary permit parking for our neighbors. And that's probably an explanation of why we feel, or an example of why we feel so desperate about this. Because we have tried, and we have tried among ourselves to figure out where temporary this and temporary that, and this hour's there and that hour's that. And the truth is, we're just rearranging problems, and which has a very simple solution, which would be to include this tiny piece, which is surrounded for more than half a mile by permit parking. So we are literally it. There is no, it's not like there's 3 or 4 other streets to choose among. And what this has done is it's led us to be here opposing the benefit for our neighbors, because we need to get attention drawn to the fact that the problem is severe, dangerous, and continuing and escalating on our part of Iredell Street. And as sort of harsh as it is to say that we're opposing someone else's benefit, we really have been left with almost no choice in this instance. I noticed that it says on here that community impact statement, none has been submitted. Consider us the community impact statement, which we are submitting as loudly as we can by opposing the renewal of the temporary permit parking, preferential parking below us on Iredell Street.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Mr. Nagler.
Yes, sir. John Nagler, live on Iredell Street for 50 years.
How many years?
50. I guess what I want to say is at the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy, they told us that this was a unique situation where they have this loop that funnels down these hikers down our street rather than back to the parking lot. So as a unique situation, there must be a way that you can treat it uniquely. This 5 limit zone, this block thing that they say they can't do a 6th, is a catch-22. Because if we want a new permit, a new zone, so to speak, there's a moratorium on new zones. So there's no solution, even though everybody agrees with this. Everybody, the Department of Transportation, everybody. So we must be able to do this. And I think that 5 zone, maybe that 5 block thing was, I think, originally set up for strips where you have separation, like on Ventura Boulevard, right where we live. So the people right adjacent, all the businesses, up 5 blocks could get protection. But then down Ventura Boulevard, there's no restriction. You can park on Ventura, so you can go every block, you can go 5 blocks up. Here, we're all tied together. It's sort of a different thing. I don't think that rule applies to us. And we have, as been stated, the need is exactly as stated here in your report. It's just all on us now. And it's growing. The other thing, it's getting worse all the time. It's more and more and more. And we'd like you to amend this rule or somehow help us.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate everybody's comments. Staff, come on up and help us on this one, would you?
Good afternoon, council members. Tamara Martin, Department of Transportation, Parking Permits Division. This is an impacted area. You have heard from the council members, staff, that, and even from the residents themselves, that this is a necessary district for the area. The complaints that we have heard regarding not being able to include a 6th street, that's actually set forth in the municipal code. So any change to that, and in our rules as well, any change to that would require legislation from this body or from the council itself, and an opportunity to be heard, the full procedure to change the rules. When this district started back in 2006, there were numerous parking studies performed, and only 2 streets passed the parking study. Up on Iredale Street at that portion, there was not a problem. This is something that came to light during an April 13th meeting out in the council office of Paul Krikorian, where we met with the residents. Since that time, and in light of the moratorium, we have been, or our district office has been dealing directly with the resident population and their representative group to try to work out an effective solution of signage. And I understand that one of their members is out of town, and they've been trying to set up a meeting to clear the plan and install signs. And that should be also given an opportunity to work. It may end up being a temporary solution should the moratorium be lifted. But at this point, we have a moratorium in our division because we are short-staffed, and since the moratorium started April 26th of 2010, we've lost additional staff as well. So we are still trying to deal with the backlog and help the pending situations out there.
Here, let me just ask this question. It's compelling what these constituents have said. Their particular block is where everybody ends up going because all the others have preferential parking.
Yes.
You say it's a narrow street and it's a dangerous street. One gentleman lived there 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what about these people? What can we do? Can we change the municipal code? Can we add to the municipal code? Can we make an exception? I mean, what can be done for those people that came here to speak? Obviously, I agree with it for the rest of the area. That's why it was put in the first place, but this block wasn't. And what about these folks?
It was not put in, sir, because ultimately we do have the 5-block limit, and as the blocks are considered, they are considered at intersections. And when the district was established under the prior council member, the election was taken, I understand, to include the alternate park entrance rather than to continue along Iredale Street. This is a one-size-fits-most. Unfortunately, that leaves, and I'm sure you all have it in your districts, an occasional street which, unfortunately, we can't stretch to fit. They may have an additional impact, but in this case, they're working with our actual staff in the area, the engineers in the area, to try and reach something that is a workable fit at this time. And that should be, like I said, given an opportunity to work.
And that workable fit, would that assist these folks who feel overwhelmed?
This would be the plan of the alternate areas that they have been working with Brian Gallagher in our Valley office to deal with, excuse me, to deal with the ability to have pockets of no free parking, some pockets which are no parking, so that people can turn in and out of their driveways, so that people can have guests over. And in certain respects, they won't be faced with the purchase of permits. They won't be faced with some of the other issues that come along with being in a parking district. At this juncture, we cannot stretch this to include them. We are just prohibited by the rules and the codes.
Well, then, could we change the code over time so that they can have relief?
At this time, there is a movement to revise our rules and our procedures. We are hoping that by the end of this year that those will be in place and that we can afford relief under those new rules.
And under those new rules, can this committee do anything to assist and expedite that? Can the new head of the department assist and expedite that?
I'm sure that he would be more than willing to help.
I'd love to hear his comments on this.
I think we should ask the city attorney. I believe since the council adopts in the municipal code, the council also could waive the 5-block limit.
Yeah, friendly amendment. Can you do a friendly amendment?
And I wouldn't recommend that broadly speak as a citywide policy, but, in this particular case, given the facts, I think that would be an alternative for the committee and council to consider.
So can we waive it at this committee level at this point? No. Oh, please, city attorney, explain to us.
Since it was passed by ordinance, you would have to amend it by ordinance, which you can do.
So then I'm proposing we amend our ordinance and look into it and do it. Would there be a problem in saying that at this point?
Yeah, I'll look at it. This should be fine.
Okay, can I have a second?
I want to ask some questions. If I could ask some questions, and then I'll go.
But you have a second.
You got a second.
I have a second with Mr. Koretz on the motion. Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Sure.
Okay, you're all good people, and you got a situation. The people of California bought the land. The people of California want access to the land. And the challenge that goes, one of the assignments you have to do, Mr. De La Vega, is meet with Mr. Muckry of the Park Service and Mr. Edmondson of the State Park Service, because the people bought that land. And in essence, even in your own Venice Beach, you could put PPDs throughout it, and you would not have the problems of overcrowding, but you share the park. What Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach and Redondo Beach did 30 years ago is zone out parking so people don't get to their beaches. They get to your beaches. You have a very important challenge that we got to figure out. And if we could do a friendly amendment as opposed to changing the code, I would rather do that. But I also want some study, and I know Mr. Gallagher is a very smart guy, because this is not just the only spot in the Santa Monica Mountains. It's unique in this area here, because there's some person, and I forget her name, and I wish I did. She was a great advocate for the Santa Monica Mountains. She said the one thing you got to expect when you buy a public park is the public. And this situation you have is great that people are walking and exercising, but it's not what you planned in your neighborhood. In other regions, as I spoke of earlier about the development of Los Angeles, they did zone separation of these issues here. So this is a critical problem here that needs study, because what you do here will impact what has at Beechwood. In Beechwood, Mr. Rosendahl, they have now the GPS. You got GPS in your car?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, GPS is a thing that takes you right to the front door of any address. And now hundreds of cars go right up a very narrow street like your own and try to get to the Hollywood sign. And then if you want to direct them to a park, it overwhelms them and it becomes a challenge. And the thing I said first is the people bought the land. They didn't buy it for you. They bought it for everybody. And so we have to see how we do that for accessibility. And can we require Mr. Edmondson in the state to not charge for parking, or that anyone who uses the park has to be a friend of Fryman Canyon and they pay into it and have some shift. It's overwhelming in Runyon, it's overwhelming in the Hollywood Hills, on both the Mulholland side and others. So this is a very important point, and I want to try to help out, but I think there's a bigger question on access to public land and how you deal with it.
Fine, thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Well, I would agree with that, but I think if you took that point of view, you'd say, let's get rid of all of the permit parking and let's let the whole neighborhood bear some of the brunt of that. But there's no way you can say, okay, we've got permit parking in most of this area. Let's let this one block be totally inundated. So we clearly have to find these folks some relief. So that's why I'm happy to second Mr. Rosenthal's motion. We can't be so bureaucratic that we create this bizarre situation where every other block in the area is permit parking and one has no way for the residents to park because it's inundated. So I hope we can be less bureaucratic, figure out a way around this, whatever ordinance we have to tweak, let's tweak it and find these folks some relief.
Appreciate that, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Parks?
I mean, if we're able to alter the current ordinance, do you have the resources to actually lift your moratorium and cause it to occur?
Yeah, I don't think we have the resources to lift the moratorium.
I mean, just in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, I think that we can prepare the necessary paperwork with the city attorney.
So you can do that, and if the ordinance is changed, you could actually address this issue?
Yes.
Okay. Then let me ask, because I'm not familiar with the area, if it's extended this extra block, then where would people park in general if that block is off limits?
Yeah,
or the entire 6 blocks?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Councilman, and also relates to Councilman Labange's comments. There's an off-street lot provided by the park for the purpose of public access to the park. You know, it's similar to a lot of the state parks. So I think that would be a mitigating factor why this is a unique situation that needs to be addressed.
Okay, but is the parking on that park lot a pay lot, or is that a free lot?
It is a pay lot, is my
Is
understanding.
that what people are avoiding, the pay?
Yes. And it is also my understanding that there's one other small area that we've gotten contact from as well. I mean, like I said, this is a one-size-fits-most approach. And this, I'm sure that once we start making exceptions, while I do understand the severity of the impact here, we run the risk of others coming before this body saying, we also have a very similar situation and we need relief too. Can we make exceptions?
Yeah, but if I understand it in the sense of the preferential parking, they are all set up for some tailor-making within a community. That's right. And
Pardon me?
the reason we put these in place is you're tailor-making parking restrictions for a community.
Correct.
So everybody's getting a little exception because of their uniqueness. I think the concern that I would have is that, and I don't know why, if we eliminated this block initially only because of the 5-block rule, then I think we literally interpreted the ordinance and forgot about service to the public.
Once again, council member, that was in trying to see where a problem may occur. Then you're trying to forecast the future. Where will these people go? Where are they more likely to go? And where do we have to draw our boundaries, as any one of you have in your own districts? And sometimes it doesn't maybe work the best when you look at it in hindsight. However, when all of these blocks in here have people who are complying with the permit sales, and we've taken a look to see, is there a block that we could eliminate? Unfortunately, we didn't find anything that people weren't complying with and that we had an ability to change the boundary.
Let me ask, is this a new problem, or has it been occurring since 2006?
On this district,
Yes.
the first that we'd heard about this was last year.
When they established the paid parking, drove some of that.
I believe
Yeah. 2006.
What occurred in 2006?
That day is when the issue began.
Oh. Somebody come to Mike and explain to, I can't interpret 5 conversations. What happened?
In 2006, when the parking lot at the corner of Laurel Canyon and Fryman for the Santa Monica Conservancy, when that became paid parking area, all the parking dumped out on the streets.
Since 2006?
2006. Shortly after that, the temporary preferred parking district was established and left us off. So from the day that temporary parking district was established and left off our spur of Iredell Street is when we've been impacted, and it's just grown in severity.
My question was more narrow. How long have you been complaining about being left out of the district?
The day it happened. It just progressed. You know, we thought there were solutions.
When did your concerns occur?
Yeah.
From the first day?
From the first day.
What did Wendy do about it?
Okay, well, thank you all very much for this. Now, let me just summarize where we're at and see if the city attorney agrees with this amount. Mr. Labange's point about public parks and public use is a clear issue. And of course, what Mr. Parks just said, can we do it? And your response to that was clear. What I put in as a motion, Mr. Krikorian, second, basically says this. We want to go forward with what we have in place now. Correct.
Hey, we've been getting confused.
I just did a Paul K and a Paul K, and got the wrong Paul K. Okay. What we did was...
I'll call you Cindy.
You can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for supper.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So what we're doing here is moving forward with the parking preferential, but with this amendment, Mr. City Attorney, what do we do?
Well, I'll work with the Department of Transportation. We'll look at how we can limit language in that so that we don't have the situation where suddenly you're overwhelmed by people who just want it on their block because they want it on their block. We can do it so that in order to make this exception, if we want to do this, that they have to have a public hearing in this committee and they have to provide evidence the way you did today that it's necessary. That way we don't run into the problem of having the world inundate your offices because they just don't want people parking.
So the motion I put in that Mr. Corrett second will give them within this process the relief that they're looking for. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, can I just...
Please.
If we can approve what we have before us, the renewal of the preferential parking district, request the city attorney to report back as soon as possible with input from the department on recommendations to amend the ordinance to address the issues that have been raised. That's
terrific. That's the motion. Second, unanimous support, Council?
Yeah, I just want to make one point, and I want to solve your problem. We have to have a bigger issue, because this is one of many acquisitions that the public do have access to, and to be able to do that in the right way.
I agree. Totally agree. And thank you, Maria, for putting it in the proper language. So the motion has been moved and second, and unanimous support from the committee.
Can I ask the city attorney a question?
City Attorney, a question, Mr. Park.
Let me ask you, as you formulate the amendment, or whatever the right term is, on the current ordinance, is there an ability to craft language so that in the future, so that you're not creating a new ordinance every time, that there's language that gives this committee the ability to look at exceptions?
Right. We'll work on that. There's a way of doing, possibly by resolution. After you have a public hearing, that you can add as agreed by resolution.
Oh, that's good.
So we can do that by resolution. All right. Thank you all very much. Did you? We understand. We understand. And we appreciate everybody coming, and we're working on that, and that will be the direction of this committee to go forward. I want to... Yes, and the city attorney will work on that and bring it back as the clerk...
How long will you do
we'll find that out. You can check with the department afterwards, okay? I thank you all. That item is now resolved, and we'll move forward with that to council. With that understanding from the city attorney's office and the input from my colleagues on the council. Okay, thank you all very much for that. Now we have, and we would like to do on consent, but it's up to you, Dr. Clyde Williams. You've signed out of all these cards. If we could do 3 through 9 on consent, and then go right to the end. Is that okay? Okay. It was Dr. Williams for number 9. So on consent for those items, 3.
3 through 9. All right. Items 3 through 8 are renewals of other preferential parking districts. And item 9 is the city attorney report and ordinance updating the civil parking penalties.
Okay. Mr. Parks, you go with that? Yes. Okay. Mr. Kretz? For 3 through 9?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And just for the record, item number 7 is actually related to temporary preferential parking district number 130. There was a typo there, so we'll just correct that when it goes to council.
Very good, and thank you for catching that for us, too. Okay, so now we're with one item left?
Yes, item number 10 is the Rosendahl-Kretz resolution relative to prohibiting the parking of vehicles that are in excess of 22 feet or over 84 inches during the hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. on both sides of Sawtelle Boulevard, both sides of Olympic Boulevard, and both sides of Mississippi Avenue within the parameters identified in the motion.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, today is a resolution I introduced in response to various complaints about parking problems in my district. This resolution is one idea, one solution that I felt compelled to put forth since I've been receiving numerous complaints and have no other solutions to consider. I want to work with the community to find lasting solutions to address these parking problems. That being said, as we all know, the California Vehicle Code authorizes cities to restrict the parking of vehicles on streets during all or certain hours of the day. So now I'd like to ask the city attorney staff, Judy Reel and Michael Nagel, as well as LADOT staff and Jay Kim, to come to the table and explain what is before the committee today. Then I'd like to have the public comment section after that, and then I would also like us then to come back and respond. And I'm going to turn it over to the vice chair while I hit the restroom real quick.
Go ahead, please, Madam City Attorney.
Thank you. Councilmember, Deputy City Attorney Judith Reel. Before you today is a resolution, a motion to enact a resolution that would restrict the parking of oversized vehicles on identified streets in West Los Angeles during specified hours. I can briefly address the legal parameters here of the city's authority to act. The Vehicle Code Section 22507 authorizes the city by resolution or ordinance to restrict parking of all vehicles or identified types of vehicles for all or certain hours of the day, and that's what this resolution does. The courts have held that this Vehicle Code section is a broad grant of power to local entities to regulate parking within their jurisdictions. Court of Appeal has stated that this Vehicle Code Section 22507 shows that the state has decided to turn over regulation of parking minutia to localities. Localities are best able to understand and respond to local parking problems. If the City Council chooses to enact this resolution, of course, it needs to be for to solve legitimate parking and public safety problems. It would not, for example, be a lawful purpose to legislate to cure a perceived competitive imbalance in the marketplace. However, council is free to decide that there are certain parking problems that exist in the city and public safety problems that exist, and if this is a reasonable means to cure those problems, the council may lawfully act.
Mr. Kim, you have anything to add to that?
We really see this as more of a direction to the department. We do not have an official position. We have not gone out and done any kind of a formal study to set the records clear. However, what we can offer as a part of the testimony to the committee would be that there have been some complaints that were received, and as a result of that, our parking enforcement officers have been out there, and they do routinely go out there to enforce. And so the issue of oversized vehicles proliferating in the area, I think that's something that perhaps our parking enforcement officer from the Western Parking District could address better. And I think that's about the limit of our testimony at this point.
These are on specific streets?
Yes, they are.
And do you know what the width of the sidewalk is?
They're generally 10 to 12 feet. But we have different.
You sure they're 10 or 12 feet?
Well, I can look it up for you.
Yeah, look it up. But I think that all should be researched. Mr. Rosendahl, back to you. The chair, we just got the report from the city attorney and from Mr. Kim, but I look at that. I haven't opened the public hearing yet, but I think all that material.
On Sawtell, I believe it's 10 feet.
Okay, what location are we looking at here?
This is Sawtell, just north of Olympic and Mississippi. It's a 2-block. There's a kind of a commercial.
This is the only area, Sawtell? This is the only area we're working in?
Oh, we're looking.
This is West LA.
Councilmember, the resolution identifies 3 specific streets.
Got it, but it's generally in the West Los Angeles planning area.
Correct. It's Sawtell Boulevard between Mississippi Avenue and Olympic Boulevard, Olympic Boulevard between Bundy Avenue and Centinela Avenue, and both sides of Mississippi Avenue between Corinth and Beloit Avenue.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, back to you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Did you both speak?
Yes.
They did a good report.
Okay. All right. Colleagues. Okay, great. Okay, we have a bunch of cards, so I'm just going to start rattling off some names and just come on up. Timothy McAble? Very good. Kevin Brandt? Did I get it right?
Yes.
Come on up. Matt Geller? three. I got one more chair here. Is this Michael or something, Grant? I'm sorry, Michelle. Okay, great. Okay, please, you can go first. We're just going to go down the order. Doesn't matter. Go for it.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Grant. I'm the Cheese Executive Officer of the Grilled Cheese Truck.
Oh, that's my favorite. No.
I have a couple of concerns and questions as regarding this resolution. The first that is really one of the questions I have in the resolution, you refer to private lots and public streets. The question that I have is where the committee's jurisdiction is in terms of private lots, and whether or not there's anything within that that actually relates to what we're talking about here. The second is, how does this restriction that you're talking about putting in, how does that relate to other vehicles other than food trucks? Which my concern is that this is really directed towards my industry and my business. And obviously, my concern has to do with whether or not how it relates to the competition aspect of all of this.
Sure.
The question therein then is, how do these restrictions affect, and where are the limitations in terms of delivery and moving trucks and things like that as well? As of right now, the DOT just mentioned there have been no official studies as to what the deleterious effects of these vehicles are in the area. And I do think that, while there may be issues here, and I know that there really has not necessarily been a great resolution to any of them, I do think that the committee does need to keep in mind that a big part of the reason that the trucks that are really being targeted by this are in those areas is because there's consumer demand. And particularly in the area of Olympic and Bundy, I can speak from my truck of the amount of times that I've had calls to come to that area.
Okay, thank you. And I know the city attorneys are taking notes, and we'll ask them to respond to that as well. Thank you very much, Michelle. Next speaker.
My name is Matt Geller, CEO of the Mobile Food Vendors Association. I'll just start. The Olympic height restriction is a backdoor food truck prohibition meant to financially benefit one restaurant to the detriment of hundreds of area office workers and businesses. I know this because I've met with Lemon Moon restaurant owners, with the councilman, with you, and they've complained that competition from food trucks was bad for their business. Of course, they've also discussed public safety issues. But I have a feeling that they didn't call or complain yesterday when this Verizon Fios truck was parked in the red right in front of their restaurant. So really what this is a resolution meant to benefit one restaurateur to the detriment of hundreds of office workers in that area. The trucks go to Olympic because Hulu, which is that online TV internet site, they're a tenant in the Kilroy building. And they ask them to all the time. They ask the food trucks to come. They want to provide a good work environment, and they feel that having lunch options for their employees is an integral part of that environment. Hulu wrote a letter to you yesterday. Their representative wrote a letter to you yesterday, and they said that, please know that Hulu, this is a quote, one of the businesses in this area adamantly disagrees with this motion. We are frequent visitors to the food trucks, and we believe that they are a welcome alternative to the other very limited, overpriced options in the area. We feel the presence of this type of meal option is important to our company culture. And that was to your office yesterday. I think it was to Len. Now, on the subject of the Verizon truck, I was at Olympic for 30 minutes.
Do we have a copy of that letter?
He does. He's the one that sent it to me.
Could you make sure it goes into the record?
On the subject of the Verizon truck, I was down there for 15 minutes. I saw a UPS truck, a Verizon truck, and a tree trimming truck, all of which would be prohibited. And so basically what you're doing with this motion is all of the other businesses in this area would have to make special arrangements to even get their packages, assuming that there's equal enforcement, of course, and I'm assuming that there would be equal enforcement.
Thank you for that. Sir.
Sure. My name is Kevin Barrett. I'm also with the Mobile Food Vendors Association. One of our concerns is the lack of transparency with which this resolution is brought here. I mean, this committee, we've all been on a task force formed by this committee to come up with solutions to the alleged problems with mobile vending. And so what we're trying to figure out is why when we have this task force and we work through all this stuff, my understanding is the task force is still in operation, but instead it's this piecemeal restrictions. We can only imagine that if this restriction is valid, then tomorrow another street will be added, and another street, and another street, and each one will say, oh, public safety. I looked at the resolution, there's a mention of double parking.
I got it.
And there is no other mentions of public safety, maybe alleged public safety. But there's been no study, as the Department of Transportation mentioned. We know this won't be enforced. Matt said, oh, is it going to be enforced against delivery trucks and UPS trucks and FedEx trucks? We all know that they're not going to give tickets to those trucks. So what this is an attempt to backdoor state law, which says you cannot regulate mobile vending except for public safety purposes. And this is an attempt to regulate mobile vending solely for anti-competitive purposes. There is no public safety purpose for this limitation. It will not be enforced against any vehicles other than mobile vendors. We all know that, and therefore it's this committee using its police power to pass restriction to grant a monopoly to a single restaurant housed in a building owned by a multi-billion-dollar corporation to the detriment of small business owners and the consumers at large. Therefore, obviously, we oppose this restriction and resolution.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Sir?
Yes, my name is Timothy Abell. I'm the owner of the Flatiron Truck. We operate on the west side. We operate all over the city. Our main concern with this resolution is the fact that we have a consumer demand. We get emails every week asking us to come to either 26th and Penn or Olympic area, also other places on the west side. And our main concern is are we not going to be able to service our clientele with this new law? We feel like it's a infringement on our ability to be competitive. We pay sales tax, we pay state taxes just like all the other businesses. In the food truck business, we don't necessarily have some of the same advantages that restaurants do, even though we have some advantages over them. But I feel like coming from a restaurant background, I was the chef de cuisine at the Wilshire restaurant before this, which is a fine dining restaurant in Santa Monica. There's absolutely no way that food trucks compete in the same way with a restaurant. So if this is like these gentlemen were implying, a way to backdoor food trucks in order to make a level competitive playing field, I think that there needs to be some discussion about whether or not there actually is, if there actually are direct competition to, Lemon Moon or other businesses that are around here. And as far as the equal enforcement is concerned, I see, I work a lot of times with movie sets and production facilities, and there's absolutely no way my truck is, bigger than some of these huge trucks they park on street corners all over the city. Some of these street corners, it is hard to see to back out, especially in West Hollywood, where I live, where there's often shooting. So if this is going to be, you put this action into law, I feel like you're also going after other businesses that are, you're going to end up hearing about it later. If this is after food trucks, maybe it should be written about food trucks and go after food trucks directly, because the way that it sounds, you're just going after the size of the vehicle. You're going to end up, ticking off, Sony and MGM that have huge semis that park all over the place. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Bonnie Christopher, Raphael Luneta. Again, I apologize for mispronunciation. And if this is Mandy Saltzman, Mike Lee, that was easy. And then after that, I have Sheldon Cates and Stephen Bob. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Lee. I work at the restaurant Little Hong Kong Cafe.
I can't hear you.
I work at the restaurant Little Hong Kong Cafe, which is located at 2129 Sawtelle. I'm also a resident in that area. There's enough traffic already on Sawtelle, but driving down the street and unable to see a pedestrian cross the street because there's a food truck, you can hit them, and I've witnessed 2 accidents in front of my restaurant because people are trying to pull out of the driveway, but you can't see the entire street of Sawtelle. The cars are coming down. So people are rear-ending each other, and people are side-swiping each other. So my concern is that when there's food trucks parked, you can't see down the street.
And that is all along Sawtelle?
All along Sawtelle. So if there's 4 trucks parked, your vision is maybe a block down the street, because the only thing you can see is the next block over, but you can't see like cars coming down the street. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments you want
No,
to make?
that's it.
You got a minute left.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Hello. My name is Rafa Lunetta. I'm a partner, not the sole partner of Lemon Moon, but I am one of the partners there. And my issue here is, okay, we had 9 trucks on the 25th of May. We had 9 trucks on the 2nd of February. We had 11 trucks on the 18th of January. We had 4 trucks on the 4th of January. We had 10 trucks on the 13th of December. If this amount of trucks isn't creating an issue with public safety, then you know what? I don't know what is. They are big. You can't see. I've got photographs of what it is like coming out of the parking lots. From the building, you cannot see oncoming traffic to the left.
Could we have them passed around?
I've got cars that are holding spaces from 6 a.m. until, those are 2-hour meters. I've got cars right here holding spaces from 6 a.m. until 11, till the lunch trucks come. I've got pictures of vehicles putting their food on the grass, okay, waiting for the lunch trucks to get there so the lunch trucks can then put their food in their cars. They don't have anywhere to wash their hands. We in the restaurant business know, under the environmental health, working with the health department, that we are under a lot of restrictions to make sure that we run our businesses very tight. I don't have anything against the lunch trucks. Lunch trucks were very cool in the beginning. They were very nice. Now we are talking about complete invasion. 11 trucks is invasion. It's public safety, and it's also environmental health dealing. These photos will clearly show you. Every one of these photos will clearly show you. 6 a.m. Truck comes at 11 a.m. They hold it till 2. That's 8 hours on a 2-hour space. I've got a 30-minute parking space. I get taped. Okay, we got it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate that. Would you hand them to the clerk so they can be passed around to the colleagues of mine? Sir?
Hi, I'm Manny Salzman, and I'm a property owner on Sawtelle Boulevard. I'm here to voice my concerns, not just for myself, but some of my neighbors, when it comes to the traffic and safety on Sawtelle Boulevard. As you all know, this is a little tiny street that's used as a major thoroughfare, especially during the traffic hours. As it was before the trucks, I think that cars had a hard time going through Sawtelle, and the traffic backed up all the way past Santa Monica Boulevard. These trucks further exacerbate this problem and create a problem where cars have to go into side streets. The visibility from driveways, coming out of driveways, is blocked by these trucks. I also experienced seeing 2 accidents there. When they mentioned, some of the people were mentioning that delivery trucks take up the same amount of time. Delivery trucks usually show up for 10 to 15 minutes and leave, and they have loading zones. And they also use private property to unload some of their packages. I hope that you guys will limit these trucks from, and not just the food trucks, but other trucks if someone else was parking there for hours and hours at a time. I think this will minimize some of the hazards on the streets. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we're talking about a resolution that will affect all oversized vehicles. I want to be clear on the record for that. Yes, ma'am. Your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Christopher. I'm the asset manager for Kilroy Realty Corporation. Kilroy Realty Corporation owns and manages the Westside Media Center, which is located at 12312, 12200, and 12100 West Olympic. I'm here to voice my concern about the safety, the traffic safety that we've faced ever since we've had an increased number of food trucks. The parking meters are now completely taken up by the food trucks. The clearance for our clients and their visitors to get in and out of that. We have an entrance and exit right off of Olympic Boulevard. The clearance is almost not there whatsoever. We have had frequent situations where there was a near miss. I've had personally a few of those things happen to me. Luckily, nothing happened, but it is definitely a safety issue, a safety concern. And the other concern that I have, the Westside Media Center has 800. We have 800 people that work at Westside Media Center. It is a 300,000 square foot building. Hulu occupies about 38,000 feet, and they probably have about 50 to 60 people. The safety of the 800 people that have to get in and out of our building every day is of utmost concern for us, especially since the impact that I'm talking about doesn't really directly impact Hulu because they have parking elsewhere, so they don't have to take the same entrance and exit as the 800 other people in the building have to take. The other concern I have is the increased number of trucks have caused some damage to our property, in particular in the landscape areas, and an increased cost, significant increased cost in terms of damages. Thank you.
Just while you're still here, since you're the management of this complex?
Correct.
What about your UPS trucks and these other trucks, which are oversized vehicles, too? How do you deal with that?
UPS and FedEx trucks, we have a driveway right off of Olympic Boulevard, and that driveway is designated for those types of trucks because we don't have enough clearance in our underground parking. So the trucks normally park in that area. That's a designated area for deliveries.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think you all have spoken, the four of you. We have two more people. Or three more. We have Sheldon Katz, and we have Stephen Box. There he is. Go for it.
Congratulations on your new role as Defender of the Brown Act.
Yeah, and by the way, I truly do believe in the open transparency in this committee and the department as well.
I'm pleased to hear that. So my name is Stephen Box. I live in Hollywood, and I'm a consumer. I don't own a food truck. I have no interest in the industry other than I'm a big fan, and think that it is a tremendous expression of all that's wonderful about LA's burgeoning street culture. And as the federal and state Complete Streets Act resonates through our communities and kind of encourages us to embrace our streets as public space that's good for everybody, pedestrians, mass transit users, those that ride bicycles. It's our public space. Other cities have, I don't know, the Fountain, Heroes Square, places to meet, but we do it on the streets, and I'm pleased to see that the food trucks offer us an opportunity to bring the streets to life. In fact, I think the Planning Association, when they had their conference a year ago, used a food truck in North Hollywood to kind of celebrate the fact that it's our great open public space. So I kind of am opposed, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, to this piecemeal prohibition as a step forward in looking at solutions to the fact that LA is kind of big, kind of crowded, and sometimes we start to debate the use of public space, such as curbside parking spaces. So rather than exclude certain groups, such as these particular trucks and the negative impact it'll have on the food trucks, the gourmet food trucks, I'd like for us to work on solutions. And as the champion of this open and transparent process, I think we can do better by asking the folks involved to work on solutions rather than forcing this small prohibition, which I think is the tip of the prohibitive iceberg, and I'm distressed that we're talking about it today. Thank you very much, but I'm opposed and hope you'll join me in rejecting this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sir.
Hi, my name's Sheldon Katz, and I'm the owner and president of No Reservations Catering. I'm definitely opposed to this. I think that it's a prejudice of a class, and I think that it's too restrictive, and it can affect all businesses, not just the food truck industry. I worked for a nonprofit many years, driving a 20-foot box truck, picking up donations where we were at meters for 6-7 hours, helping a drug and alcohol rehab. So I think there's a lot of other issues that's underlined when you put something down like this that is so blanketed. And I think that there's other resolutions and other solutions that would that would possibly and more than likely correct a lot of the problems that they're talking about in the public safety issues that I've heard here today. One of them can be that, that there's a car length in between every truck. That's something that will increase the visibility and resolve the issue. I think there's just much easier ways and much simpler resolutions and solutions to the problem than what's being presented here today. And I think that it's important that we look at this and possibly sit down and come to a resolution that makes sense rather than a prejudicial resolution that's going to injure an industry and a lot of small business owners. Because as we injure more and more small business owners, more and more small business goes out of business, and we have less of a tax base. And as less of a tax base, we have problems with our cities and our states making budgets. And I think we're seeing that more and more with what's happened in the state of California and in the city of Los Angeles. And I think it's really important to sit down and come to a resolution that makes sense, that will not injure small business. Because I can tell you this. Just like some of the bars, just like some of the clubs that have an overabundance of attraction, and then they have big crowds of people and lots of cars and people walking across the street illegally and all of these problems, are we going to continually add more and more restrictions?
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the public comments. Can I ask staff to come back up and first address some of the comments made by some of the public speakers? And I would also like to get your sensing of where this goes. Okay, please.
Well, I guess maybe the city attorney could elaborate a little bit more on what the requirements are under the statute and what vested authority that the council may have as a local jurisdiction, elected official, to make a certain finding and regulate oversized vehicles. And I think that's something that maybe the city attorney could elaborate a little bit more on, what may constitute, I guess, the necessary requirements.
Council members, as I said, the state has granted to the local jurisdictions broad authority to regulate parking in your jurisdiction. If council seeks to enact the restrictions that are before this committee today, it is doing so, it would be doing so, and it would need to be doing so to address perceived public safety problems or parking problems. And a court generally defers to a council's determination as to what those problems are. Courts don't like to second-guess legislators as to what the real problems are in your communities. There does need to be substantial evidence of a problem that the legislation seeks to cure. You have heard testimony today that you may believe provides the evidence that you want, that you personally would want in order to enact this legislation. There was discussion of a Department of Transportation study. That would be evidence. It's not required. The courts do not require that evidence be in any particular form or by any particular entity. So at this point, it really appears to be a policy decision for council to make as to whether or not you think that these restrictions would cure the problems that you believe exist in the city, and would be a prudent regulation.
I see the county gentleman is here. Would you come up, please, to the mic? Introduce yourself. One of the speakers made an alluding comment about health issues regarding this. We've heard from the management of the building that they saw safety issues involved. I'd like to understand if there is, in your opinion, health issues that need to be considered in this as well.
Terrence Powell with Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. The two areas that I'm familiar with is the area at Olympic and Bundy, and the area of Olympic and Sawtelle. Since January, we have had 28 complaints for the Olympic and Bundy area, 4 complaints for the area at Olympic and Sawtelle.
What kind of complaints are these complaints?
The ones that we responded to were allegations of either insanitary conditions due to trash or the absence of restrooms that would support the trucks staying for more than 1 hour. The complaints we did not respond to were complaints of too many trucks, blocking visibility of the fixed facilities and such, because those aren't health issues. With respect to those complaints that we did respond to, about a third of those in the area at Olympic and Bundy did not have restrooms, which would concern us in that regard, in terms of employee hygiene. In the area of Sawtell, half of those did not have restrooms in terms of our visits there.
Councilmember, and I neglected to state one other matter. Is a lot of almost all the discussion here concerned the presence of mobile food trucks. But as was pointed out, this parking regulation would apply to all oversized vehicles in the area.
Yeah, and hearing that the management of the building made that comment clear, and I'm just curious, they have their own ability to get their trucks in, so it's not an issue for them. Colleagues?
What's the planning department here for? No reason? Okay. Planning department's here. You know, I tried to work something out, Mr. Rosendahl, in my district, but it was rejected, to look at the areas of what we would call, and this is where Jay Kim would come in, side streets, so any visibility of what is the tri-light or the traffic signal would not be impaired. At the locations in the Miracle Mile area, there's sometimes very long strings of trucks. So I think it's important, if I do believe, and when I made the comment earlier about the bicycle leaving the sidewalk, I do remember when I was on the MTA board, there was a tragedy at USC at Adams and Figueroa of a bus pedestrian accident with a bicycle. I do believe that the visibility of a long line of vehicles, whether it's FedEx trucks, dump trucks, or food trucks, should do that. And also the other pressures are, historically, a number of food trucks in Los Angeles, in the Wilshire Center area, have operated free of these challenges that we now hear, because they work one at a block as opposed to a crush that does cause a panel of sight. So I think if this is an opportunity to try to deal with as a potential problem, yes, it is an opportunity to try to deal, and no one is, I think everybody's disabled, to deal with a defined loading zone or from 11 to 2. I don't like the fact that some people sit on parking meters all day long, because that is, the parking meter intent is to turn the parking over. But if we define that there should be one space per block, and that could be done, or if this is a method, because your streets are quite different than the Wilshire streets, because many of them were not improved to what we call modern city standards, sidewalks so close to curbstone, no parkway, etc. So I would defer to the councilman of the district.
Just to be clear, I'm a food truck fan.
I got it.
I believe in food trucks, and I believe...
But you're a safety fan first.
But is safety that I'm concerned about?
Right.
Sawtell is a narrow street. We've heard of 2 accidents there. And safety is also an issue with the media center, as they describe how trucks come in and come out.
Let me just ask a question. What liability, Madam City Attorney, does the city have when on a committee agenda item is an issue that is brought up, that you have points that people have made that feel that there is an incumbent challenge for safety, and then if we don't act on it, does that make the city more open to a challenge?
Councilmember, I'm not aware of any increase in city liability that would occur by virtue of considering this item and rejecting it. I believe at this point it is really a decision that is in council's hands to determine whether or not you believe there are public safety and parking problems that need to be addressed in the manner that is proposed.
And staying with the public safety and traffic, I see an officer in the room. Could you come on up, and I want to ask you a question. If the large vehicles are violating existing parking rules and regulations, were they issued parking citations? Tell us of how the department has been dealing with that issue.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain LaTanya Allen of the Western Parking Enforcement Office. We have assigned officers to the area on a daily basis to enforce all parking regulations. I can say in the beginning, we did have quite a few problems with some of the oversized vehicles parking for extended period of time. However, we have been enforcing the area on a regular basis, and we've noticed that very few citations have been issued in that particular area in terms of the catering trucks or oversized vehicles because they are complying with the parking regulations.
Are you finding that also in Sotel?
Yes, on Sartell as well. And we are issuing citations for any vehicle in violation. But like I said, over the past maybe month or so, it has really reduced.
Mr. Parks?
You know, in looking at this issue, I think, I don't know if the ordinance itself may be too restrictive in the fact that the ordinance should be dealing with what I would think are the parking issues solely. And in the sense, and I would hope in reading my material that those that are here advocating for the trucks, if they're individually or collectively are blocking parking, are ignoring the posted meter signs, and a variety of other parking issues, then this ordinance is being driven by those actions, because most people wouldn't have paid attention to them had they not violated those rules. But I think on the the Department of Health, whether there's one truck or 15 trucks, people should be certainly complying with the health issues in providing sanitation and things of that nature, and should not be leaving debris. So that, in my judgment, is outside of the ordinance for parking. On the visibility side and the parking issues violation, I think the ordinance is valid. But I think I would not like to see something that would impair the delivery trucks and people who have valid business, that we currently address it with loading zones and a variety of things, so we'd have to create a whole new situation for them to service their population. And so, again, I would hope that in dealing with this, that those that are most affected are not the ones that are out basically posting cars to hold up parking for 6 or 8 hours, or that they're sitting in meters well beyond the regulations, because, again, those are the activities that I think that the general public is concerned with. So if the issues that we're trying to address are beyond the public safety issue or the violations of the permitted parking, I think the ordinance goes a little beyond that. I would, like I said, hate to see legitimate delivery trucks being impaired and they have to come up with a separate system. And again, I think it's self-policing by the vending trucks that will alleviate this problem more than the enforcement by LADOT. And as far as health, that should be standard no matter what violations that we have. And so, again, I look at the ordinance as being more restrictive in harming legitimate delivery businesses, and it does not cause those who may be causing the problem in the sense of the metered parking and such to be accountable. And I think that's where the real issue is.
City Attorney, would you respond to that, please?
Councilmember, I believe at this junction, this is an appropriate subject for council to debate and decide whether or not they think that this resolution that would restrict parking is in fact warranted.
Mr. Kretz.
Yeah, a few questions. So when I think you said there were about half the trucks didn't have restroom facilities?
At Sawtell and Olympic.
So what do we do with those? How do we enforce that?
Well, we cease business. We close the business, and they come down to our offices to answer to it.
And so are those now not functioning and not parking there, or can they just turn right around and show up again?
They may reoccur at the spot, but or the location, but they're required to give us information on their acquisition of appropriate restrooms if they stay anywhere for 1 hour or more, including if they go back to that same location.
So is there any kind of substantial fine for functioning in that way?
It would be if we elect to go to court and prosecute. There is a fine that could be imposed by the courts.
Anybody actually prosecuting them, or is it just on the books but not really?
No, we have been to court on many cases in this area, not in this specific location, but we do enforce.
Is there anything the city could be doing to supplement what you're doing?
No, I don't think so. Not in the way of health. I think if there was anything, just as a commentary, one of the things I have noticed, and this is across the 85 cities, not simply Los Angeles, is that the use of private lots to allow for more or less a food event where you have a collection of trucks or booths has relieved a lot of the conflict between businesses and actually handle several different things at once. For example, where there is a lot where you have a collection of trucks, there's a responsible party that will provide restrooms, that will provide venue sanitation, and therefore there's no nuisance to be had here or a health issue. So I would encourage the city to consider the development of such lots throughout the city, and I think that would help relieve tensions on both ways and even parking.
Well, there's no question that would be a much better situation. As far as parking, what are these food trucks doing that are no longer in violation? Are they leaving after an hour and coming back in 2 minutes? I mean,
They're complying in terms of if it's 2-hour parking, then they will leave. They're cited at the location, cited for the meter. Tires are marked, cited for the time limit. We actually have a few that have parked in the red, and we have cited those vehicles as well. In terms of enforcement, we are enforcing them. However, like I mentioned before, the majority of them are complying. Others are being cited for the ones that are not.
So the ones that comply, I'm trying to figure out how they make this work for themselves. Do they drive off and come back to the same spot? Do they drive off and find another spot nearby? I mean, have we
Yes, a
figured out
lot
what
of times
they're...
they will leave the location. They may go to another location in the area. That is correct. And our concern is only the parking regulation. If they're in violation, we're not, because if they go to another legal spot, they're entitled to park for that amount of time that allows them to park at that particular location. And we enforce that as well.
Right. What about trucks that leave trash behind? Is this still a frequent problem, and is the county enforcing this actively?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Trucks that leave trash behind or don't provide appropriate receptacles and are causing a hygiene hazard in their area. Are you having that problem still as well? And if so, are you citing people for that?
The majority of violations, notwithstanding whatever's operational on the trucks, have been really around the restrooms and the lack thereof. The sanitation at the site in terms of leaving trash, I would argue, has been minimal in terms of the complaints and our findings.
Okay. How many places in the city are we having these kinds of problems where we're getting massive complaints? Anybody have a sense of how many hot spots we have?
I'd only be guessing. What I can tell you is we have a little over 3,000 trucks, and they operate in most of the 85 cities, not all. And it is very difficult to differentiate a hot spot because we also have an issue with illegal vending, which is often commingled with Central LA.
So there's 3,000 trucks in LA County
That are permitted.
Yes. And where are most of them based? Do you have any idea?
The majority are based in the city of Los Angeles in terms of their commissaries.
And okay. And in terms of for tax purposes, et cetera, are they based in LA or are they based out of LA? Do we know?
I did not speak on that in terms of their tax responsibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Please. Captain, you ever seen a FedEx truck with a ticket on their windshield driving around town?
Driving around, no, but have we issued a citation?
No, have you ever seen a FedEx truck or a UPS truck or another delivery truck with a ticket on their vehicle driving around town?
Driving around town, no. But
Has anybody in this room ever seen that, or am I the only person who's ever seen a FedEx truck or a UPS truck driving around? I've seen that sometimes, where they got a ticket and they take it and it makes them feel a little secure that they don't get, some people have seen it. Okay, that's it. What's the standard distance of an automobile in a parking meter space, J. Kim?
I'm sorry,
What's
these
the
are
standard
standard
distance?
meter spaces.
What's the width?
They're typically 8 feet in width, about 20 feet or so in length.
How long?
20 feet.
20
And they
feet.
typically
What's the
have
width of a food truck? Does anyone know at that table? And the length of the food truck? 'Cause some of the pictures that we saw did extend further on that. I think there should be some count to that. I would say my fear is the visibility of a driveway in and out, and the visibility. On Beechwood yesterday, a tree truck was finishing their day, and they stopped at Scenic Drive, and they blocked the stop sign, and someone ran right through the stop sign. I could see that happening. I worry about the visibility between a crosswalk. That's why I'm interested. I proposed alternatives on side streets next to commercial streets that gave 2 spaces that you could regulate. If there's 3,000 trucks, they should pay a regulation on that, as does the taxi or some other vehicle that uses space. But that being said, Mr. Rosendahl, I'm going to listen to the councilman of the district on this and support what you would say, because the safety is an issue as expressed to many people on the height and the width of the concentration, whether these are vans from Beacons or food trucks from around Los Angeles. I think if this is an opportunity to try to disperse concentration, I think that's important. I also welcome any opportunity for what our fine county inspector said about creating spaces off the street that kind of solves a lot of problems. So whatever you would like, Mr. Rosendahl, I certainly am going to study this issue too, and also try to revive my Wilshire plan for those who have a situation similar.
Let me just ask, because I'm not familiar with the area, are there legitimate loading zones impacted on these 3 streets?
Are they impacted in terms of the trucks
If this
occupying?
ordinance came in play, would that cause those loading zones to be less effective, or are people that are using them legitimately would be impaired by this ordinance?
Well, that would be how the ordinance is actually written. The loading zone itself is an ordinance that has
I'm just
certain
wondering, would this
restrictions.
supersede- so if a truck this size was in the loading zone, would they be impacted? Could they continue to use the loading zone?
Councilmember?
That would be something that,
Yeah, the loading zones typically have a restricted time limit.
Mhm.
I think that's what would compel them to not necessarily use it for conducting their business, because they have a time limit.
I understand it, but I'm just saying, does this ordinance that's merely going by length and height and not by timing supersede the loading zone on any of these streets?
No, I guess the loading zone would be, it would have the typical value that it has, and if you are a legitimate FedEx or other types of delivery service commercial vehicles, they would still be allowed to park and operate under the current regulations. So it wouldn't change the loading zone. I think this affects the current meter zones that are out there today for.
So I want to make sure loading zones are not a part of it.
They're not, if there is a loading zone today, they will not be affected.
And let me ask you, maybe, what is the current status? Somebody mentioned there's a task force. Do we know where that is, or is that still alive?
We're still trying.
Mr. Alicorn's the chairman. He doesn't have any parking meters in his district, but he has it in his committee.
Well, there's the task force that Mr. Alarcon and his committee is dealing with in terms of the competition and business aspects, and then we're still struggling with trying to get a citywide approach to that.
That's a summer study?
Yes, we'll consider that a summer study. Ongoing summer study.
Now, one thing I just want to comment, I didn't get your name from the health department?
Terrence Powell. Terrence Powell.
Okay.
Inspector Powell.
Okay. Let me just ask, when you mentioned earlier that it's been resolved in other cities where private property's been made available?
I wouldn't say resolved.
I mean, it's mitigated.
It has helped to mitigate.
Let me ask you this. Has that generally been the city or the municipality, or is that the person that is receiving the service, such as the businesses that are attracting the trucks? Are they providing that space?
No, those have been private individuals that own the space that have either offered it up or rented it out in some way. typically with some measure of approval by the local city.
Okay, so, I mean, are they, what is their role if they're just providing the parking? Are their employees taking part in the attraction of the trucks?
Sometimes it is, the event itself is an attraction. Other times, the collection of trucks is part of something else that's going on, and they're simply providing food service. So it can vary.
But the thing is, I just wanted to clarify, because I don't know if that's something the city would want to absorb in the sense of them being responsible for lots or locations, but if it's something that came up as a need by those who are attracting the trucks, that might solve their problem with keeping the trucks coming and not be impaired by this ordinance.
I'm not familiar with the ordinance, but...
Excuse me, I believe you're referring to the resolution that would restrict parking in West LA?
I'm just saying, if these on-street problems are existing, and people think there's a need for the trucks for their employees, it would appear that it would be in their interest to find off-street parking to allow that to occur. I mean, I just want to make sure that it's not something the city's role, but it would appear the business would want that as opposed to...
You have a lot of that as well, where you may have a company or an entity that has property, that has employees, and may invite a food truck on their property. That happens as well. Home Depot being one of those, for example, most of them have that sort of food service. What I was really pointing out is where there is a collection of trucks and there is an available property owner or entity that has a property, and they get the necessary permits from the local city, be it fire department and so forth, including health, to have more or less an event where there's a collection of trucks and all of the supportive elements are there to support a collection of trucks. You don't have that on public streets.
Let me ask you, is there someone that speaks on behalf of the trucks or the vendors? Is there an association or is it all individual? Could you come out? I just want to ask.
There's two different groups, Mr. Parks. There's Rancheros, who are the primary historic Wilshire Center, downtown, single operator, one a block catering trucks. And then this would be the new emerging group.
Okay. I would just like to know, I don't know if you saw the photos that were presented.
Yeah.
Is it your impression in the sense of the trucks that are in these metered area, if this is ongoing and true, that trucks are parking many hours beyond the posted meter time in violation of various other parking rules and regulations? They park in long periods. And I think some of the photos reflected that people actually are saving spots.
Yes.
And actually bringing product.
I mean, I don't know about the product. There are definitely issues, and we've, with Councilman Bill Rosenthal's office, we've tried to address many of the issues. We had an issue with Art Walk downtown. Mm-hmm. Trucks were everywhere. It was pretty nightmarish for the trucks as well, and so we put them all in a lot. Now Art Walk has about 30,000 people that come down here. So this Thursday, if you go down to Art Walk, you'll see 30,000 people walking around, a food truck lot with 22 trucks, another with 12.
Where is that, downtown?
That's downtown, between
Miss Perry.
Yeah, so we've been very successful in that regard. Another one was the First Friday event, which last July had 58 trucks on the street and in a lot, and this past one had 27, and all of them had bathroom letters except for 4. They weren't association members, but we've really mitigated that. Another one, there was some issues with LAX. We put them in a lot, working with the Business Improvement District. So as these things come up, I mean, there's the Wilshire issue. One of the things that Councilman Labange didn't want was trucks parking on the 5700 block. And I think for the past 4 months, there hasn't been 6 months, there hasn't been one truck on the 5700 block. Now, there are businesses on the 5900 block that really want the trucks there and give them bathroom letters. So, but you do run into issues where you can't control every truck out there. What we've tried to do, because the association, our association actually operates lots. We have one in Santa Monica, 7th and Fig. Are you familiar with the whole construction that's going on over there?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Brookfield reached out to us to have, since they have no more restaurants, to have 3 food trucks a day, 3 days a week in their plaza. So they actually put wood blocks down and we put trucks.
Can you park on the streets of Santa Monica like you do on Wilshire?
Yeah, you can.
And Sawtell? all day long?
Well,
In the Santa
I mean,
Monica?
just like any other place, you have to abide by the parking regulations.
Right, Culver City,
Culver City, I mean, yes, you can.
10 minutes, and then you got to move.
No, not
Yeah,
anymore.
Culver City's 10 minutes, you got to
Yeah,
move.
that's what's on the books.
Okay,
but-
so other cities have different things.
Right, but I mean.
I'm just saying, what we have to do is see where we're going. I'm not bad.
I'll just tell you that the city attorney has agreed to no longer enforce that 10-minute rule because it's not in compliance with California state law. So,
Let me just say.
and that's happened in Burbank,
And
Glendale.
the industry standards, so you have the ability to control parking, or you have?
Well, we do our best. You can't control everybody, and what we've tried to do, especially because we have these lots which are a thing of value, what we've started to do is just say, look, you have to abide by the rules. Then this is what we did in Venice. If you don't have a bathroom letter, you can't go to Abercrombie. You can't act foolish, otherwise you won't be able to get into the Santa Monica lot or the 7th and Fig lot.
What are you doing as far as setting some standards for people that are holding spots?
That's a tough one.
Or bringing product in a car?
Well, that's a health code violation. I'm right. A car is not a licensed facility to bring food. So, I mean, that is a violation clear, and we would have issue with that, and we would reach out to a truck owner that we knew was doing that.
Okay. What about holding up parking places for 6 or 8 hours?
That's another, I mean, like the DOT officer was talking about, she said that on Olympic, that has been less of an issue. So as these things progress, people are changing their behavior to be a little bit more responsible, and we're trying to encourage that. Of course, we can't, make everybody act right, all at once, but we do our best to try and guide people to abide by the regulations that are out there.
But do you communicate with that?
130 trucks, yeah.
You communicate with them regularly about these kinds of?
Yes, and there's we have this practices guide about all the regulations that they have to abide by, whether they be city, county, or state.
But they have to be your members?
There are 3,000 trucks out there. 300 of them are in the Lancheros organization, about almost 140 now in our organization, and then there's a lot that are not in any organization. The percentage of our members compared to the amount of kind of the Twitter/branded trucks, we have a pretty high percentage of them in the association, and we're constantly reaching out and working to deal with these issues. Really what Director Powell was talking about the lots, that has been our most successful program. When we open up a lot in an area, the people are happy about it, the trucks are happy about
Does
it.
the other organization deal with as responsibly as you're saying yours perform, as far as these kinds of communication?
I'm sorry, say that one more.
Does the other organization?
I think so. But she's CEO Erin Glenn of the Lancheros organization. She's been around longer than I have, and she's been working to really, help the trucks act responsibly and know the rules. But she's 300 out of 3,000, so there are always going to be ones that we have a harder time reaching out to.
I know that Ms. LeBon wants to move forward with the motion, and I know some of my colleagues want to leave, but since you're sitting there, you heard the management of the location there on Olympic talk about their safety concerns, and you heard for sure the same kind of concerns mentioned on Sawtelle, a very narrow street. How do you address those issues?
I think Sawtelle has a much more. I think I was down there yesterday, and I've been looking at it. There's a very large red zone to allow on the east exit a clearer path. Now, I think one of the issues is one of the things that I would do if I was the city is I would put a right turn only, because trying to bounce out across 5 lanes of traffic, I agree, even if there is not a food truck there and there's just a SUV, it's going to be very, very difficult. A right turn only sign would mitigate the, people taking the chances to shoot out. The red zone could be extended farther to give more of a clearer path of sight so people could see farther down. Already, I think it's 30 feet, but if you extended it 50 feet, and took up one more of the parking spaces, I think you would have a much clearer path, a sight path.
Remember the meetings on Olympic that we had in my office?
Right.
Which was an effort also to deal within a parking space, take away the cluster notion from a safety standpoint, but also to see if you could help self-police and maybe end up with 3 so that they could be spaced enough from a...
Right. So that, I mean, that is an option, but the way we left that was, let's see if we can use that lot. I just learned today that Kilroy absolutely does not want to use that lot in front, but that's kind of where the communication ended. And I guess from what I heard today, I was supposed to just, on my own, drop it down to 3 trucks. And, you know, we've been good, and I think you would agree, especially on the Abbot-Kinney issue. You know, I work with Abbot-Kinney Merchants Association. I meet with them once a month at least to try and mitigate
And you've been
issues.
good in Westchester.
And the Westchester event, and thank you, Sheldon, because he's the one that really spearheads that. But, you know, as an association, we can't just make things happen. I mean, the city has to meet us halfway. The people that are concerned have to meet us halfway. We have to have some sort of cooperative measure. And just saying, hey, Matt, drop it down to, get it to 3 trucks. Thank you. I mean, one of the things that I talked to the DOT about is we have a red zone this big between 2 spots. So, one of the trucks is going to dip into that red zone. If that red zone wasn't there, put another red zone. I mean, there is a way to do it, and there is a way to self-police, but there needs to, the city has to meet me halfway. I mean, on the Abbot-Kinney thing, we're just being draconian. If you don't have a bathroom letter, then you can't go to lots, and so we really
Have you met
are
with the
scrapping.
management team?
Yeah, I've met with them twice in your office, but from what I gathered from those meetings is they just don't want trucks. And they said, it'd be cool with 3, but I need your help. I mean, I can stop it to 3 through my members, right? We can work something out, but then I have other ones. So we have to look at the parking spaces and move, maybe move one little red zone, create another loading zone. I mean, there are things that we can do that aren't as, even though Kilroy has a driveway for delivery vehicles, look across the street. Those were, I saw a UPS van bigger than any food truck.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask that we move this now, okay? We move what the city attorney has given us advice on. This is a resolution that we move forward and ask the department to do a variety of things that it takes forth. And this directed upon adoption of this resolution, transfer directed to post signs on a given notice based on the council input, based on the department input, and further ask that we work with a variety of organizations, whether they represent 130 trucks or 300 trucks or any other organization, to help work with the issue. I move it. Second.
Did you want to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just wanted to add a clarification. Earlier, Councilmember Parks asked about how this would impact the commercial loading zone. It doesn't impact the loading zone during the typical enforceable hours. For example, during the weekdays, it's from 7 to 6. So during those hours, the typical 30-minute that you're allowed as a commercial vehicle, that would stay. But however, the current proposed resolution talks about having the hour limits up to 10 p.m. So between the hours of 6 to 10 p.m., if this were to go forward, there might be some vehicles, some businesses that may look to use that commercial loading space, do kind of a longer-term loading and unloading. And if this were to go forward, it may begin to impact those kinds of uses. So we just want to point out that before we finalize those little details where those types of business could be affected, that we either make some exceptions or, figure out a way to deal with.
Where you put the loading zone, you put it at the tail of the block. But we could work with you on that.
But we just wanted to clarify that it may have some
Captain knows
effects.
Right. Claire, very good.
You want to say anything more?
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? And 1 opposed. 3-4, 1 opposed.
To clarify, the action is to approve the resolution? Thank you. 3 to 1.
I think there's a step in between. I think they got all the pieces here.
Okay.
Hold on.
Do some work on getting the businesses set up, get things working. Just let me say I mean,
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting's adjourned.